Here we have a probability scale that goes from 0 to 1 inclusive. We can't have any numbers, any values outside of this range. All probability is between 0 and 1, and it can be 0 and it can be 1. Let's look at the vocabulary that we use. If there is absolutely no chance of something happening, for example, if I roll a dice, what's the probability that it lands on a 7? Well, there's 0 chance of that occurring. So we use the word impossible to describe that. At the other end of the scale, if we're absolutely sure that it's going to happen, we use the word certain. For example, if I roll a dice, what's the chance of me getting a number less than 7? Well, all the numbers on a dice are less than 7, so it's certain. If I take a coin and I flip it, there are 2 possible outcomes. One of those is tails and the other one is heads. There's exactly a half chance because there's 2 equally likely outcomes. There's a half chance of getting heads and a half chance of getting tails. Sometimes when we describe it in words, if we mark halfway along our probability scale, we call it an even chance. If there is a chance of something happening that's more than impossible but less than an even chance, we say it is unlikely. If there is a chance of something happening that's more than an even chance but less than certain, we say likely. For example, an unlikely event could be getting a 3 on the dice. It can happen, but there's only 1 3 on the dice, and there are 6 numbers. A likely event could be rolling a dice and getting a number that is 2 or more. Lots of the numbers on a dice, in fact 5 of them, are 2 or more. So that's likely, but it's not all of the numbers because 1 appears on the dice. Let's now look at probability in numbers. We can express a probability as a fraction, a decimal, or a percentage, because each of these help us to write a number that's part of a whole. It can be 0, a probability, it can be 1, or anything in between. An even chance is exactly a half. Let's consider our dice. A dice has 6 numbers. Now, what's the probability that when we roll the dice we get an even number? Well, these are the set of all possible outcomes, the universal set. How many of those numbers are even? 3 of these numbers are even, and there are 6 possible outcomes. How many of these numbers are less than 5? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, or 4. Remember, 5 is 5. It's not less than 5. So we can write 4 over 6. Now I'm expressing these as fractions, but it could be expressed as a decimal or a percentage too. What's the probability that I get a 7? Well, 7 isn't in this set of numbers, so there's actually a 0 probability. It's better to write this than 0 over 6. What's the probability that I get a number that's less than 7? Well, all of these numbers are less than 7. So there's a probability of 1. And that's better than writing 6 out of 6. Here's a spinner from one of my favourite board games. There are 10 numbers on the spinner. See if you can find the probability of each of these events occurring. Pause the video, have a go, and then press play when you're ready for the answers. Well, firstly, there are 10 numbers on the spinner, so each probability is out of 10. We can express that as a fraction, a decimal, or a percentage. How many of these numbers are even? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the probability is 5 out of 10. And you could write that as a half. How many of the numbers on the spinner are prime? Well, there's 2, 3, 5, and 7. That's 4 out of 10. And that's the same as 2 out of 5, or 2/5. You could express this, of course, as 0.4 or 40%. How many numbers are less than 12? All of them are less than 12. So there's a 100% chance of it landing on a number that's less than 12. Or we could say 1 whole. How many of these numbers are the number 5? Well, there's only 1. So that is 1 out of 10. Factors of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 factors of 10 on this spinner. So the probability of getting a factor of 10 is 4 out of 10. Or we could say 2/5 or 40% or 0.4. The probability of it landing on a 4, a 5 or a 6, well, there's 3 of those numbers. So that's 3 out of 10.